subscribe? Tariq Radio. Like and subscribe.
Well, I don't have a letter Q in my name, and I'm not drunk, so I'm sober as a judge. How
Good.
are you, sir?
I'm good, man. Chris, what state are you in? You don't have to say the city, just the state.
Yeah, I'm actually in Virginia. I grew up outside DC, still live in the area, so yep, that's where I'm calling from.
Cool, cool, cool. So what's on your mind?
I just wanted to talk to you about reparations. I wanted to understand the standpoint you're coming from. I'm glad to listen, and then wanted to have a little bit of a debate on this, if you don't mind.
Okay. Yes, so reparations should be in the form of cash payments. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at reparations in the form of cash payments for foundational Black Americans, based on us having to be forced to build this country without being compensated, and the debt has been passed down, and the maldistributed resources from the wealth generated from my people building this country has been maldistributed and locked into the dominant society. So, what do you disagree with about reparations?
So I'm gonna ask some questions, and then I'll get your answers, and then we'll go from there. How about that?
Well, it's a dialogue, so we have to have a dialogue. So, I wanted to know what issues that you had. I just explained what reparations means to me, and I would like to know what issues you have with what I just said.
I wouldn't characterize it as an issue. I would say that I don't agree with
Why
reparations,
not?
but
Why not?
well, I think you got to look at everything by case basis, right? So you got to look at what somebody has contributed, right? I don't disagree that where you're coming from in terms of contribution to the US, but I think you also got to look at the history of families as well. So if you look at my family, they began fighting in the Revolutionary War. They fought on the Union side in the Civil War. So there were a lot of contributions my family made towards freedom. I don't disagree with you that we have a bad history in our country of slavery. So I'm not coming from the standpoint that, we didn't wrong black people in this country, but I just don't agree with the concept of reparations.
But you haven't really given a reason why. You just deflected and talking about your family fought in some war and something. What does any of that have to do with what's owed? There's a debt that's owed. When you aggrieve a group of people, the government that did it will compensate them. This is that way all across the board. The Japanese were compensated. Jewish people were compensated. We didn't even do anything to Jewish people, by the way. We still give them compensation. The red native tribes were compensated. Why is it okay for these people to be compensated, but not foundational Black Americans?
I think you raise a good point when you talk about the Japanese internment during World War II. They were compensated. I think it was very minimal, though, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, they were
I think,
compensated. Yeah, they were in aggrieved in a very minimal manner. It's only a few years, but they were still compensated for it. Yeah. So yeah,
yeah, I think it was like $1,000 a person,
no,
something like that.
20,000.
Believe me, I'm not saying that's right. I mean, I think what was done to Japanese Americans was
No, it
terrible.
was around
I think
20,000, by the way. I think it was around 20,000 per person. But go ahead.
okay, yeah, you can correct me if I was wrong, no problem. I think slavery is a horrible thing that we had in our country. I think it's something that we definitely need to unite together and work together. I think we can agree to disagree on the concept. I know a lot of people in here might not agree with me, but I just think we need to move forward as a country, and I don't think reparations is the cure for that.
Yeah, well, you weren't aggrieved, so yeah, you can move on because you came from the side of the people who benefited from that labor. So you weren't aggrieved. You weren't harmed by the legacy of slavery. And you're not still haunted by that. We're still haunted and harmed by the legacy of it. We were never compensated. And we'll move on when we get paid, when we get our compensation. You when you owe something, you just can't say, "Yeah, you know what? Let's just move on." If you get some furniture, rent to own furniture, and you've had it for 20 years, and the people say, "Hey, you owe on this furniture." Well, it was just so long ago, but you're still enjoying the furniture. You're sitting on it, sleeping on it, laying on it. You've enjoyed the full fruit and the comfort of that furniture. You just can't say you don't want to pay it because you've had it for a long time. It doesn't work like that. So we have to be compensated because that's the just thing to do. And we were aggrieved by the United States government. So it's the US government that owes us. Does that make any sense?
I get where you're coming from, but if I have a family that didn't own slaves, I have a family that's from the north,
No,
they never owned
no,
slaves.
no, 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 no,
How
no,
does that how
no.
does that affect my status in terms of paying reparations? That's my question for you, sir.
Oh, okay, sir. I didn't put anybody in no damn internment camps in World War II. I had nothing to do. My family, I didn't put Japanese people in internment camps. Yet in 1988, when I was paying taxes as a teenager, I was still paying taxes. My tax dollars went to compensate Japanese families. Why is that?
My tax dollars went to compensate Japanese Americans too, so how is that any different for me?
Right. So it was the US government, and we are a part of that US government. And the US government used our tax dollars to compensate the people that the US government aggrieved. Same thing with slavery reparations. The US government had us enslaved. We couldn't get out of slavery because of the US government. They even sent military troops from the army to go down to Florida to fight black people. That was called the Seminole War, but it was really a black war. The Fugitive Slave Act was enacted by the federal government that stopped us from getting our freedom. We tried to go to a free state. They would use that federal law from the US government to come get us and put us back in slavery. So we couldn't get out of slavery because of the US government. So that government, which people have come over and became a part of to enjoy the benefits that this US government has devied out based on the labor that we provided for free, everybody became a beneficiary of that aggrievement. So that means everybody here is on the hook. If you're a US citizen, you're on the hook of it. So it's not about you personally owning a slave. It's that ain't it. The US government owes. Does that make sense, sir?
Yeah, I guess I mean my distinguishment would be between the southern states and the northern states. This is kind of what I'm getting at is that I think I think you would have a more valid case if you were going against southern states that had slavery than northern states. I think you know where I'm coming from here.
Don't, sir, because we don't live in a divided nation that's the North and the South are separate. They're all together. The northern states are a part of the US government. The southern states are part of the US government. So they owe. In fact, slavery, it was really started in the North. The northern states had slavery. And also, they benefited from slavery. The industries that they had in the North, they had the factories that were built off slave labor and the resources. They were using those factories to refine the raw materials that was being shipped up from the South. So it was a whole operation that was working with each other. Everything dependent on our foundational Black American free labor. We were the foundation of all of that stuff. So yeah, the North, the South, East, West, everybody owes, meaning the US government, right?
So you would agree that we were a divided nation when we had a civil war from 1861 to 1865, correct?
Trying to divide because there was a thing. They were trying to divide. They didn't divide. They were trying to because the South, they said they felt the North was being hypocritical. The North was double dipping. The North, remember, slavery basically, it started in the North. Some of those Quakers were damn slave owners. They try to make it seem like the Quakers were these progressive people. No, you had Quakers like William Penn, who Pennsylvania was named after. He was a slave owner. You had, a lot of them in the North. And you still have plantations up there now in New York. Is it, I think, Long Island, they have a plantation called Sylvester Manor up there. But the North was double dipping. The North, some of the northern states started to slowly abolish slavery because they started to get factories and they became a little more industrialized. So they said, you know what, we're going to start an abolitionist movement and we're going to make money by having people send us money so we can talk about how slaves need to not be mistreated. and some of the northern whites were saying, "Hey, look at how those blacks are treated down south. Send me money so I can help them." So that became a hustle within itself, and the South was like, "You goddamn hypocrite! How dare you sit here shading us about slavery when you sold this Negro to me?" So that's where it was like a little family spat that they had. And then the South said, "You know what? We don't really need you guys because we can do trade overseas. We don't have to send all of our raw materials to you guys. We can really get our own nation going. We can get something called the Confederacy going, and y'all can kick rocks." And the Union said, the North said, "No, we can't do that because it mess the whole nation up. You mess up the whole finesse we got going on." And that's what the Civil War was about. It wasn't about freeing us. The freeing us thing came later. It was about keeping the Union together so that the South wouldn't start doing overseas trade and become too powerful. So we just got to understand history. But they owe, they owe. The North South, they all owe. At the end of the day, they owe. Right?
So let's look at it like this: the South did secede from the Union. That's a historical fact. Are you disputing that?
Did they?
They did. I mean, look at the history. That's exactly what happened. You had a capital of the Confederacy in Richmond, Virginia. You had the South secede from the Union, and we fought a 4-year war over it. And a major part of that war was slavery. The Union did not want slavery. The Emancipation Proclamation was signed at the end of the Civil War, but the Union was against the Civil War. Abraham Lincoln was against the Civil War. He did not want to fight that war, but he was also against slavery. You had abolitionists at the time, so there wasn't everyone united in slavery. I do agree there was a large chunk of the United States that did believe in slavery, but I can't believe that every northern state believed in slavery. There were several abolitionists and several people speaking against slavery and that did not have slaves.
Yeah, they spoke against slavery so they could make money off of it. That became a finesse. They were doing the Sally Struthers hustle. Remember, slavery was in the North. Slavery was alive and well in the North. Like I said earlier, they became a little more industrialized, so they didn't have to rely on the slave labor as much because they had mechanisms in order to do some of the factory work and things of that nature. But the Civil War was not about ending slavery. The ending of slavery thing came later because the North was, let me be very clear, the North was kicking the shit out of the South. Well, not really. No, no, no. The South was kicking the shit out of the North. Let me say that. The South was actually winning the Civil War. You understand? So they were about to form their own nation. They didn't fully form their own nation. They were setting it up to form their own nation. That's what the war was about. They wanted to set up a Confederate nation. It wasn't set up yet. It was
I'll disagree on that point because the North had the railroads and they had access to food and moving supplies that the South did not have. The South didn't have the organization and the ability to move freight lines. You also had, the burning down of cities in Atlanta and throughout the South that messed up their, freight lines for food, supplies, all those things. So I would say maybe in the first year or so, maybe year and a half, the South was winning that
I-
war, but it quickly shifted to the Union.
why. Okay, why did it shift to the Union?
Again, I think the railroads and supply lines were a major part of it. And I think that also, if you look at the war, Lincoln changed his command with his generals. He went to Ulysses S. Grant, who later became president of the United States, and he was a major part in the war. He went away from McClellan. McClellan was one of his generals that was not effective on the battlefield, and that was a key turning point in the Civil War.
So the key turning point was they started to let black freedmen fight. That was the turning point. The North was getting their asses whooped by the South, and they said, "Hey, look, some of you blacks, if you fight, we'll give freedom to black folks." That was the carrot that they dangled because they were losing, and they said, "Hey, we need some of these black folks to fight." And when black folks started to join in, that's when the North started to win. We started to whoop the brakes off of them Southern white supremacists. When they said, "We'll give you freedom," some of us was like, "Hey, say less." And they started to get free blacks. And Abraham Lincoln even said, if it were not for the um, black freedmen who helped us with this war, we would not have won. He even acknowledged that. So that's where the turning point was. So it wasn't initially about ending slavery at all. And what's interesting, after the Civil War, when we were supposed to get 40 acres and the mule, it was the northern whites who were against us getting that. They were the ones who fought against that. Why don't you Google that? They were the ones who were like, hey, wait a minute. And after the Civil War, it was the northern whites who didn't really want us moving up to the south. I mean, up to the north. They didn't want us moving up there. All of that, we're so liberal, we're abolitionists. No, they had racial laws up there too in the north. They didn't let us live up there like that. It wasn't all hunky dory like that. So, yeah, the North don't get a pass like that. In fact, many of the sundown towns, meaning towns where black people can't go after 6 o'clock, are in the North. Even today, there's a great book by James Lowen called Sundown Towns. The South gets a very bad rap. Go ahead.
So one thing you won't ever see me do is diminish the contribution of Black Americans that fought in the Civil War because that was a major part of the war. I do disagree with the notion that it was the turning point of the war. I wouldn't call it the turning point of the war. I think it was the command of the Union Army, and like I said, the supply lines was a major factor in that. We can agree to disagree on that. The other thing I will not do is minimize contributions of Black Americans in World War I or World War II. You had the Tuskegee Airmen. There's a long history of Black Americans fighting in our wars, so I won't ever take away from that. What I will disagree with is that it was the turning point in the war. So that's where we can agree to disagree.
Yeah, well, but history is history and facts are facts. Black people, and look, a lot of our contributions are always minimized, but we got to just be very real. We were the turning point in that war. The supply lines and the communication lines, many of that was coming from people like Harriet Tubman, who was very instrumental in the Civil War, and she had connections to the black people who were living in the Great Dismal Swamp. That was a place where white people couldn't even go, and that was a communications hub. A lot of information was going from the north to the south without it being intercepted because you had a sanctuary area in the Great Dismal Swamp where runaway slaves would find refuge and white people couldn't go in there. So information could safely get passed from the north to the south. And that was the real Underground Railroad. So that was very instrumental in the north winning the Civil War because they were able to send communication through the Foundation of Black Americans in a way that would not be intercepted. And that was pivotal in winning that war. So we just got to give credit where credit is due. But with all of that being said, that doesn't negate the fact that the United States government still owes reparations. And we can talk in circles about that, but they still owe, right?
I disagree, and I do agree with you on Harriet Tubman and the Underground Railroad. I think the intelligence piece of it was a key piece of the war. I definitely think that was something that contributed to the Union winning the war. So I'm not going to disagree with you
Right.
on that.
Hmm.
I just don't think it was the major pivotal turning factor in the war. I think it was much deeper than that with command, and I think supply lines. They had advantage with the railroads in terms of the supplies, not just military supplies, but food and everything. But you bring up some good points. I just don't completely agree with what you're saying, but you do bring up some valid points.
Now, when we talk about reparations, because basically, nobody really has a valid argument. It all boils down to I'm white and I say so. There's no real valid argument to not give us reparations other than we just don't want the blacks to have it just because. Literally, that's the only logical reason. If you're going to give reparations to anybody, the most logical group of people to give it to are the people who were the most aggrieved. Nobody has been aggrieved more than us, yet everybody else gets a form of compensation. So, this whole notion that we're not supposed to get something just because, that's just not acceptable anymore, sir. And you wouldn't accept that. You understand? If you were being aggrieved as a white male and you guys, they told y'all to wear masks 4 years ago, and y'all start running up in the Capitol building, sir. So yeah, y'all don't take any type of aggrievement in any shape, form, or fashion. And we're not taking that. And we're saying enough is enough. We need to get that compensation so that we can be repaired and then we can move on. Wouldn't that be the right thing to do? Just to repair something and compensate and do the right thing so that we can move on to the next step of what we need to move on to, right?
So I fundamentally disagree with you painting all white Americans with a broad brush and saying that we were all running up in the Capitol. I wasn't running up in the Capitol. I've lived in this area my whole life. I can disagree with the government, and that doesn't mean I'm running up in the Capitol. So that's not correct. So I don't see it that way. I don't think there's a case for reparations for anyone, really. I think we all need to unite as a country and work together. And I don't think reparations is going to solve that.
Yeah, but reparations are given to other people, and nobody's really fighting against it. So if you're not fighting against that, don't fight against ours, right?
I mean, I didn't have a decision in reparations to Japanese Americans and the other examples you brought up. But if that had been the case, then I wouldn't have agreed with reparations either. There's things that the country has done. I think slavery is the worst part of our history in the United States. I will not disagree with that at all. I think it's absolutely the worst thing that we have, but I don't see how reparations is a solution to slavery from hundreds of years ago. I do think it is unfair. I do think it's fundamentally creating inequality in the system. I think that the bigger case I would say to discuss is if you look at the prison system, when you have 1 in 4 black males that are in prison, I think that's where the real injustice is. I think our criminal justice system is a much deeper issue, much more pressing issue than the case for reparations.
Well, the great thing about foundational Black Americans, we can think for ourselves, and we're not going to allow people to tell us what we should focus on. We're going to focus on reparations first, then we'll get to the prison stuff later. We got to focus on this reparations thing because of slavery. We've been kind of kicking the can down the road, and people telling us, well, we should focus on something else. Let's focus on immigrants. Let's focus on environmental issues. So that's the problem. So, no, we're going to go ahead and focus on what's owed to us, compensatory justice in the form of cash payments for reparations. And we're not really letting up off that square. And sometimes you don't want to pay a debt. Nobody wants to pay bills, but hell, if a bill is due, a bill is due. And this bill is long overdue, Mr. Chris, right?
No, I don't agree with you on that, and I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree. I just wanted to know like your points, where you're coming from with that. I don't think I'm alone on that. I don't think there's a lot of people that wouldn't agree with that, and I don't think it's just a race thing. I think there are people that aren't white that wouldn't agree with that as well. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, you have a lot of immigrants who might not agree because they want to get in on it, and if we can't let them in on it, they don't want it. But doing the right thing is doing the right thing, and that's the right thing. There's the debt that's owed. That debt has to be paid, and it's long overdue. We're still being aggrieved from the legacy of that. We have not been repaired, and that's going to be the first step. And everything else is a deflection from that, and that just keeps digging the knife in deeper. So we're going to have to stop digging that knife in and start putting a remedy on the wound. And the first step is compensatory justice in the form of reparation. So it's going to happen. Now, I don't like paying bills either, but it happens. I don't want my money going to the Ukraine, but it happens. Yeah. So that's what it is. So you
Yeah, we agree on the Ukraine. I didn't like my money going to the Ukraine either. Let me ask you this. So what is your proposal for reparations? I'm curious to hear what it is. Thank you.
because you're going to agree with it anyway, so it doesn't matter. I don't have to discuss the logistics with you because whatever it is, you don't agree with it. But when the reparations come, it's going to come. We're going to get the reparations. I can take you and your buddies. I'll use some of my reparations money, and I will take you guys to go get some Rice Krispie treats and some avocado wraps, or whatever you like out there in Virginia. So I'll treat you guys to a nice meal. So that's how we can get together. We can get together and we can use some of our reparation money for some of our non-black brethren, to celebrate and really come together as a community. Wouldn't that be cool?
While I admire your sense of humor, and you do make me laugh, I don't eat avocado wraps and Rice Krispie treats. In fact, I'm probably more like you. I would sit down and probably eat more food, that's something you would like, rather than avocado wraps and Rice Krispie treats. I
Sir,
think
I don't like
that.
to put
So
stereotypes on people. I've not met a white person who didn't like avocado wraps. What
it's not me, man. I'm gonna tell you, I grew up just outside DC. I've never eaten an avocado
what
wrap in
kind
my
of white
life.
man are you?
I'm just being honest with you, man. Like,
You're not a real white. Are you Greek? Where are you from? Where's your family?
no, I'm not Greek. My background is English, Irish, Scottish, and German.
Okay, so
So
okay,
European.
you eat some potato skins. I take you down to Fridays and get you and your buddy some potato skins. I know you.
I don't eat. I don't even eat
I don't
potatoes, man.
believe
I'm a
that.
sweet.
I don't.
I promise, my man. I'm a sweet potato guy. I don't eat potatoes.
Do you date sisters? You got a sister over there you've been dating, bro?
No, I don't. I don't date sisters, but I I grew up in an environment, man, that was multicultural. I was actually a minority on my football team in high school.
Yeah.
I've been around people my whole life from different backgrounds, different cultures. Like I said, I think we're more alike than different. I think there's a lot of common ground here.
Hmm. And
We may
ground-
disagree on reparations, but there's a lot I can relate to you
and
on.
the
So,
common ground is going to be giving me my money. That's the common ground we're going to be on. And I'm
so I'm asking you, what is your proposal for reparations? I'd like to at least hear you out
don't
and to hear
It
what.
don't matter because that's a stall. That's kind of a time wasting tactic. So yeah, we I will discuss that when we start getting the Freedmen's Bureau and the people who got a pen in their hand and the check in front of me. Then I will lay that out to them. But yeah, right now I don't really get into time wasting rhetoric right now. But thank you for the call. Thank you. All right, family. Let me break some stuff down. Let me break some stuff down for the family. Okay, you got to watch that now. Let me break some stuff down. See, these are learning lessons. Notice these people who are against us getting reparations. You know they're against it. They always want to know all of the intricate details. All right, you notice that they're already against it, yet they want to know all the details of it. Well, number one, what they do, they feign confusion as a deflecting tactic. See, they act like they don't know how it's going to work. They don't. Oh, they. What are the logistics? Who's going to get it? They just keep asking redundant questions. Well, we can agree to disagree. Who's going to qualify? Where's the money going to come from? Um, Even though we want the same logistics sorted out like other groups, we want the same way other groups got it. That's what we want to do. And see, by them doing all of these time wasting tactics, see, they're trying to force us to play defense. See, by constantly questioning the details of reparations, they keep shifting the burden of proof onto foundational Black Americans, just making us explain something that's already been heavily researched. Instead of them addressing the injustice itself, we are forced to constantly have to prove. We got to just keep proving why reparations are justified. You know what I'm saying? We just have to just over and over keep having to prove why this thing is justified. So we got to watch these tactics. And they try to hide their real opposition behind fake objectivity. They try to pretend to somewhat be neutral by asking questions while subtly undermining the idea. They try to posture themselves as rational skeptics. The guys that he has already admitted that he's against reparations. You dig? So no policy I say he's going to agree with, no matter how logical it is. And I've already explained things in a logical way. I just don't agree. We can agree to disagree. It's I'm white and I say so. It goes back to I'm white and I say so. And another thing, they'll try to use time wasting tactics by using bureaucratic complexities as an excuse. They'll try to drown the conversation in legalese and technicalities to make reparations seem like it's just way too complex. You see, when people do that, white supremacists and tethers do that. They love to try to make it way more complex than what it is. Well, no, dude. First of all, dude, in the Civil War, my uncle fought for the Union, and they were fighting, and the country wasn't together then, dude. And then they were separate nations, and then the North was doing this, and then it's not that. They were all part of the same nation. They all benefited from slavery. They all owe. It's that simple. And what they do, I want y'all to understand this constant just digging for information and just keep questioning us. What they're doing also, they're trying to test for weakness and division. By getting into all of these logistical debates, they're really trying to gauge how much we know and how thorough we are with our research. You see, they're really trying to do a gauge on us. They're really trying to see how solid our arguments are so they can find a way to undermine the argument. But they don't see any holes in our argument. So they just basically they're just going to fall back on, well, I just don't want it to happen. Yeah. So what they do, they like to just flood the zone too with a whole bunch of hypothetical questions and scenarios so that no answer is really taken seriously. Everything is a hypothetical, and they just flood the zone with just um what if scenarios. Okay, what if you get reparations, is that going to make racism go away? Okay, let's see. Now the deficit is 22 trillion. If you want 15 trillion, we're going to go into a recession, and then we're going to lose the food. It's time wasting tactics, man. We got to watch these guys. And also what they do by getting into these time wasting tactics, they hope that we're going to get frustrated and just give up. See, the thing is their goal is to really exhaust us into silence. Just keep babbling, because this guy, he's still trying to get back in here. He's still trying to get back in. He's just going to babble indefinitely. We already know he disagrees, so I'm not going to get into the logistics of it with you. You already disagree. Why am I wasting my time with you? See, they want to just keep on talking and just going in circles to just exhaust you and frustrate you into silence. Yeah. If you make the conversation long, repetitive, and frustrating, they think, well, we'll just drop the subject because all they're going to do is talk in circles. No, we're going to shut your ass down. All right. Thank you. Have a good day. We're moving on. I'm not going to sit here and talk in circles with you. I've already explained what it is. I've already made completely logical sense. I've already showed case studies of other people getting similar reparations for their aggrievements. We've all agreed that that's justified. Why is our reparations not justified? I don't know, dude. It's just agree to disagree, dude. No, we ain't doing that. Some white not say so. That's some white not say so. I'm not with that. We're not doing that.
You've heard the buzz. You've seen the media stories. Now experience the truth for yourself. Microphone Check, the critically acclaimed documentary uncovering the true origins of hip-hop. Available now on Blu-ray and streaming on Amazon Prime. Visit microphonecheck.com to learn more and get your copy today. Microphone Check, the story hip-hop was waiting for.